Well, thank you so much. It's a joy to be here. It's a joy to connect with you. I've been watching from afar the great work you're doing. And I
Thank you.
said, you know what? I want to reach out and touch. I see that big smile. So life is treating you well. That's always a good thing. And to kind of support what you're doing. I'm all about supporting and being an advocate and
Yeah.
helping people. When I wake up every day, I'm always looking for a way. How can I serve? How can I help? How can I support? So
Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by my man, Audley Stevenson, the Odd Man. He'll unpack wisdom and insights from a cross-section of top quality performers in business, media, sports, entertainment, and lifestyle to uncover key elements to help you live your best audacious life ever. So without further ado, here is the Odd Man.
Greetings and salutations, folks. It's Audley Stevenson back for another edition of the most audacious podcast the internet has to offer. You've got it locked to the Audacious Living Podcast, and I appreciate you for being here as we continue our ongoing goal of helping our listeners live their best audacious lives ever. As always, I encourage you to follow us on our social media channels. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under the handle The Audacious Pod. And then, of course, if you're watching this particular episode on YouTube, then you'll know that we've got that bell that you can just tap down below. Ding, ding, ding. And that way you will be connected to all great things audacious related. Now, for anyone who knows me knows that I'm a big fan of the topic of leadership. And one of the main reasons why leadership has always been near and dear to my heart is because it encompasses so much. You know, leaders have the incredible ability to impact change in a major way through the simplest of actions, which is something I absolutely love. The other part of leadership that I also appreciate is the fact that the most effective leaders are those who are committed to constant self-improvement. They believe being better than they were yesterday, which is, of course, part of the BOLD framework, and constantly building on what they know with the intent of making a difference on those around them is the way to go. I've got Kevin Johnson joining me on this edition of the Audacious Living Podcast, and let's not confuse him with the Kevin Johnson of the Phoenix Suns fabulous point guard. This is an entirely different Kevin Johnson. This Kevin Johnson is the founder and CEO of the Johnson Leadership Group. He's a certified coach. He's a mentor, a trainer, and a speaker. And essentially what he does is he helps leaders do better, be better, and lead better. It absolutely is a great chat that I think you'll all enjoy. So without any further ado, here's my conversation with Kevin Johnson. Enjoy. Hey, Kevin, thank you for joining me here today on the Audacious Living Podcast. I appreciate you taking the time like this, my friend.
Well, thank you so much. It's a joy to be here. It's a joy to connect with you. I've been watching from afar the great work you're doing.
Thank
I
you.
said, you know what? I want to reach out and touch. I see that big smile. So life is treating you well. That's always a good thing. And to kind of support what you're doing. I'm all about supporting and being an advocate and helping people. When I wake up every day, I'm always looking for a way. How can I serve? How can I help? How can I support? So that's how we are connected. I'm glad to be here.
Yes.
Looking forward to a great program.
When I first came across your work, I got excited for two things that got me excited about you. We'll certainly talk about servant leadership and how it supports other people and helps other people to grow, nourish, and develop and get better. And then, of course, I'm being a longtime basketball fan. Phoenix Sun point guard Kevin Johnson was one of my faves, and so I always remember that dunk over Elijah in the playoffs back in the day, and he was my guy. So you got two feathers in your cap as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely, yeah. I followed him even before he became a pro. I followed him in college,
nice.
Of course, namesake. And when people across the country, when they ask me, "Are you that Kevin Johnson?" I said, "No, no, never signed that 7-figure contract like he did."
Yes, I hear you. I hear you. That's awesome. That's awesome. So maybe Kevin, as a starting point, you look, and you do a ton of work in supporting, helping individuals. You've got a ministry. I mean, it's just phenomenal. Again, I was really impressed when I looked at your breadth of the work that you've done, and you should be commended for that. Maybe get a starting point. How did you get to where you got to, man? Like, what's the origin story for Kevin Johnson look like?
Good, good. Well, thank you for those kind words. So I'm from Richmond, Virginia. That's my hometown, going all the way back to great grandparents, maternal and paternal, most of whom are still there. A couple of us decided to get away, but most of my folks are still in Richmond. So that's my roots. Interestingly enough, Richmond has a very interesting history as it relates to our nation, which has really helped me in terms of growing into a young man and then ultimately an adult. My dad is a U.S. Marine, the oldest of 7 children. He went into the Marines, enlisted, and then he was commissioned as a junior officer doing his 20 years, and then he retired after that. So a lot of what I do today, and a lot of what I did in my 34-year career in the government, and a lot of what I'm doing in my 22 years of ministry leadership is really what I learned at home. Dad taught us a lot at home in terms of being a great husband, first and foremost, being a great father, and just being a good citizen of the United States and always protecting the family name. I mean, that's kind of foundational, and it sounds easy, but it does take work.
Right.
And that sort of laid the foundation for the work that I've done and the work that I'm currently doing. I have one brother, born with a mental disability. And while Dad was away fighting in America's wars in Vietnam and Okinawa, Japan, Mom and I were here in the States helping to raise him with his special needs. We had to be his advocate. We had to support him, serve him, keep the bullies in the neighborhood off of him because he's not, quote unquote, like us. And we have a tendency to do that when people are different. We have a tendency to ridicule and tease. So I had to help. And in most cases, I was successful, but in some cases, I got beat up too. It kind of goes with the territory. Fast forward, interestingly enough, I meet a young lady. We fall in love. We get married. We just celebrated our 30th wedding anniversary a couple of weeks ago.
Congrats.
And from our union, we had 3 sons. And interestingly enough, here we go again, our 3rd son. We find out when he's 24 months old that he's autistic. So wash, rinse, and repeat. Here we go again. So from what I learned in the home, I'm able to help him, support him, advocate for him, and to be his biggest cheerleader, to help him through this process and sort of understanding what that means. So I take those skills and I take that knowledge and I take that acumen into the workplace and into the church. And my day-to-day activity, literally, when I wake up, I'm looking for ways to serve people. How can I help to make this world a much better place? So over time, long story short, over time, I just really developed an acumen and a love and a desire to tap into what it means to be a good leader. Because leaders lead people.
Yes.
And people need all kind of help, whether they admit it or not. We have issues. And when people ask me, Kevin, what is the toughest part about being a leader? My answer is very simple. It's people. That's the toughest part. You're dealing with personalities, generational differences. You're dealing with different levels of education, different number of years of work experience, different geographical locations in terms of where they were born or where they were work. So that's the journey that I'm on. That's the lane that I'm in. I actually absolutely love what I'm doing. How can I make this world a better place? I believe that I can help people to become better leaders.
I love the question, how can I make this world a better place? Because the possibilities are endless. And what it also does, Kevin, it also reminds us that we all have we can contribute in some way. Some can make larger contributions, some can make smaller. but they all do matter when it comes to making a difference, because the manner in which we impact is what we do for others. So for example, if I get into an elevator and I say good morning to someone and give them a smile, I've just impacted their day. But also what I've done is given them the ability to perhaps do the same with someone else.
Yeah, I mean, you're on point, and that's it right there. If we think at the big picture level, instead of being so narrowly focused, not only will we be more fulfilled in life, but you'll also quickly discover that many people will now be willing to reach back and support you because you have supported them. And you're not necessarily asking for any particular favors, but that's kind of how it operates. That's how it works. That's how the world goes around. And if we can get more people to understand that principle, I do believe we're on our way to making the world to be a much better place.
I love it. I agree with you. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Believe me, I do, Kevin. I guess the sort of what are sort of foundational principles of your work? I know much is tied into, so again, servant leadership, but for those that aren't fully understanding of that term, I wonder if you sort of break that down a little bit, that we grasp what we're talking about here.
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked that question, because there are a number of different trainers and speakers out there on the circuit that kind of approach it a little bit different.
Yep.
And we all try to bring our very unique nuance into how we train and how we coach and how we mentor. So our audience is really frontline, mid-level, and senior level leaders, both aspiring and seasoned, in the government and corporations, nonprofits, churches, and also in academic institutions. So we're pretty deep into the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
And what we want people to really understand and value and align with are two things. Number one, you and I demonstrate our credibility when we show up knowing our stuff.
Gotcha.
So when you have that subject matter expertise and that acumen and that intel around whatever that particular topic might be. You could be a CEO, you could be a VP of finance, you could be the chief chef, you could be the head janitor, nurse, doctor, whatever it might be. You gain credibility with people within your sphere of influence when you show up and you demonstrate that you know your stuff. But see, that's just 50% of it.
Gotcha.
The other 50%, in terms of making people whole, is leaders have to demonstrate in a very honest, authentic, and genuine way that we give a care about the people we're leading.
Yes.
And that's what comes from the heart. And so it is not a weakness, I don't care what anybody says, to be a leader with a servant's heart, because leaders are supposed to develop, take care of, have to improve, provide resources for, and help along these roads that they have to navigate to be much better so they can do better. That's the role of a leader.
Well, Kevin, people tell you a leader is supposed to be firm and steadfast, and they no emotion. Come on, Kevin, you're telling me something different now.
Absolutely. No one wants to hear that. That may have been maybe with the generation that has retired and moved on.
Right.
You have your traditionalists, and even myself, I'm part of the baby boomers.
Sure.
Maybe that's what we were accustomed to because we didn't see anything else. But those days are over.
Yeah.
Being this autocratic, mean-spirited, divisive, sarcastic, rude leader doesn't work, and people will vote with their feet. And so there was no coincidence that during the pandemic we had millions on top of millions of people leave.
Yes.
It wasn't because, quote unquote, there was a pandemic. There was an opportunity to get out of Dodge.
Yes.
So that's the premise with which we teach. That's the premise that is within the content of the books that I write and everything that I do, because I want leaders to now match what's in the mind with what's in the heart. And then from the heart comes the compassion, the empathy, valuing people, care for people, honor people, and respect people.
Yep.
And listen, I did that for 34 years during my career with the federal government. I've been retired now for 5 years. It worked for me. It worked for other leaders that I saw doing that.
Yep.
Now, it is true that leaders that are much more abrasive and much more direct and much more confrontational, they get things done. I mean, that's high productivity and high performance, but the people leave.
Yeah,
they don't hang around.
There's no lasting
so you have to,
influence.
You have to continually retrain
Yeah,
people. The
yeah,
human resource department is constantly having to
yeah.
recruit people, and we can do better. We can do better.
Sure,
So
sure.
someone just has to be bold enough to go out there into the marketplace and teach it. And once people grab a hold of it and they understand it,
Yeah,
now
yeah.
you can start to apply it.
There's a big part of leadership, at least in my viewpoint, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. But there's a connection piece, right? When you're able to connect with your individuals, and there's no better way of doing that from the heart. But when you're able to connect with people, I believe that's your opportunity to get the most out of them. And not that we're doing it from an exploitation standpoint. So I want to be very clear here when I talk about that. I'm not using it, but we are taking advantage of the connection opportunity.
Yeah, I firmly believe that, because that's communication one-on-one. Communication 101 is connecting with people, building bridges, right? Connecting, having that conversation, and then opening it up so that they will be willing to also have a conversation with you. That leads to great relationships, and then great relationships leads to trust, which is where you want to get to. But you'll
Yeah,
never get to trust unless you first have the relationship. And guess what? You're not going to have a relationship if you don't talk to each other.
yeah,
So this all kind of works together. I do my best to unpack it and make it, number one, believable, but
yes.
more importantly, to make it understandable, because you have to
Mm,
help people to understand the why behind this. We've been hearing about this phrase servant leadership for a while,
mhm.
but I have just noticed that over the past couple of decades, I still don't see it implemented and executed,
Right.
which means to me that people don't understand it. So I come with a different slant, a different angle to simplify it. And I use my 34 years government service,
Mhm.
and I use my 22 years in ministry leadership, because I've seen both sides. And I'm able to more effectively communicate the message to people so that they get it.
Do you think that's the missing piece or missing ingredient these days in leadership framework?
I do, because we don't think that we can bring love, unconditional love, into the workplace.
It doesn't
We we
belong, right?
we
It
think
doesn't
we
belong at
think
work.
yeah, we think that goes into a whole different category, and you can't
Right,
you can't be you can't be talking about love in the
right.
workplace. Oh yeah, you can. Absolutely, you
Mhm.
can. Think about all the people around the country that take 90 minutes to get to work because they're stuck in traffic. Think about the parents that show up that have a sick child that they had to leave at home or
Yep,
leave with somebody else.
yep.
Think about the people that are dealing with mental health challenges, or may have been diagnosed with something physically in their body from their doctor, and they have to show up to work. You think they
Mm,
want to report to a supervisor that's rude and nasty and cantankerous? No, they want somebody that wants to talk to them and show that they care and that they have some value. And that is not being weak. That
yeah.
is helping that person, because we spend so much time together at work,
Yes.
regardless of what you do. Why can't we exercise some compassion and be passionate one with another at the same time and get the job done?
That's it. That's it. I agree. I
So
agree.
yeah.
It's funny when I think about, like, if you go to people, everyone has like a favorite leader, kind of like a teacher. Everyone's got their favorite teacher, and you
Oh
say,
yeah.
and if you say, hey, well, who's your favorite teacher? They'll right off the top of the head, they can tell you, and they'll take a step further and tell you why
Hmm.
that person was my favorite teacher. And oftentimes it was things like listening. They showed their care, or they understood me, or took the time to understand me.
Hmm.
Those to me are very similar to what leaders can do and have a very similar impact.
Yeah, and you're on point, but here's the key.
Uh-huh.
That leaders have to be taught,
Oh,
because we've grown up in a society based upon what we see,
yes.
and we see certain people, men and women, get promoted, and we believe that we have to emulate that same behavior and mannerism in order to get
Right.
promoted.
Right.
And so at some point, we're looking for a generation of leaders to kind of stop that and just be a little bit more deliberate and intentional, and taking care of the people that get the work done in a way that they'll still perform at a high level and still produce at a high level. And I've seen it happen. I can't teach and train what I didn't do,
Right.
and see it happen, and what I've seen others do as well, across all those different marketplaces, again, academic institutions, nonprofits, churches. corporations and in the federal government, because I did it as a frontline leader, a mid-level leader, and a senior level leader. So it can be done.
Yeah, it's interesting when you talk about the appointment, right? Because oftentimes, I'm in this job and I'm performing this role, and I'm tapped and said, you know what, you would make a great leader, and it's not always recognized that that job is entirely different than what I was good at. And so when you're on the point of being taught, like I've got to learn an entire new job, and I can remember very vividly, sort of my first leadership appointment. It probably took me about a year to figure out exactly that I'm not doing what I used to do because this is what I did, but that my job was entirely different, an entirely different role, and I was to help bring others along. And so it's a really, it's an interesting learning moment, I'd say.
Yeah, and see, that's the other part that I'm talking about. See, we think that because someone is really, really, really good at what they do, then the next logical step is now to move them into a position where they're entrusted to lead others. But we haven't provided them with the resources and the training in terms of what it takes, because it's something totally different. We appreciate that you can get the job done. We thank you for your excellent performance evaluations, your bonuses, and your promotions. Congratulations. I'm the first one to give you a standing ovation. But when it comes to leading people and developing people, it's a whole new ball game, and you have to be trained. And guess what? Some of those people that are appointed into those positions, they are admitted that they don't even like people. So how are you gonna lead people that you don't even like? So you made a really, really good point, and that's a point that always comes up in all of our trainings and all of the other activities that I'm involved with leadership, because oftentimes that's exactly what happens. And sometimes it's not even cautious in terms of what people are thinking. This is not the right person for a leadership position just because they were really, really good at doing the job.
Right.
Yep.
And as when you go on the point about leadership being taught, it is an on the job training. Like, I mean, this is the reality. The training is on the job. You can read all the books, read the blogs, listen to the podcasts like this one and all that, but it's still not going to equip you fully until you get there. And
absolutely,
that's a good point.
I love the way you summarized it. That's so true. Now that we have the aha moment,
yes,
now let's have the conversation about what it means to be a leader. So that's the door that kind of opens up, because it's all about helping people to understand the why. Why is my organization in this position?
Right.
And I say, well, let's take a look right now at the people that are in leadership positions. How did they get there?
Yes.
And then we have that conversation. Oh, 75% of the leaders in your organization didn't even apply. They were appointed based upon the fact that they did a good job. But did you all provide any leadership training for them to lead people? Oh, no, we didn't think we needed to do that. So now let's have the conversation about how I can help you.
Yeah. And of those 75%, 20% of them are related to someone. So it's nepotism, and that opens up all the can of worms. And
man.
And I joke about the nepotism, but for a moment, it can't be assumed that because the boss has a son that's working there, and the boss is a good leader, the son will automatically be one too. Like those assumptions can't be made.
Yeah, you can't do that. Although we know they are made that way, but yeah, you can't do that. So that's a reality that we have to deal with. Yeah. I am more than willing to raise my hand and be one of the many people around our nation to help these organizations to know better, do better, and then ultimately lead better. That's a new catchphrase I came up with 2023. I'm going to see if I can trademark it.
we're gonna entitle the title of this podcast will be that for you.
Okay,
that to you. So
know better, do better, lead better. I love it.
That's what it is. I want. So we're talking about the podcast. I certainly want to bring it back to the topic of audaciousness, because really what we promote and encourage here, as much as we possibly can, is the importance of taking that first step, being audacious enough to take that first step, and the ripples and impacts that it can have, not only just for yourself personally. So, I've always wanted to do this and I always want to do this. Finally, I've done it. That's great for you. But what you've also done is shown other people behind you or beside you or around you, hey, Audie took that first step. Kevin took that first step. It didn't hurt them, and look where they are now. And so that part is what really what we encourage the takeaway to be. And so we talk about leadership. It's again, taking that first step and stepping into leadership, and then looking at the impacts you potentially can have with the people around you.
Yeah. So I always tell people, the first step here is just to follow your heart. Generally speaking, most of us kind of know what we want to do, but like you said, it's a matter of taking that first step and actually doing it. So I like to reverse engineer, and I always tell people, and I encourage people, and I do my best to inspire them to begin with the end in mind. Where do you want to be in 10 years? Where do you want to be in 5 years? Okay, let's take a look at that, and let's work backwards. What is it going to take to get you there in 5 years? What is it going to take to get you there in 10 years? I knew as a young pup coming right out of college, I started my government career 1 year out of college. Nice. I knew that because the leaders entrusted me to put me in a front line leadership position only 5 years out of college, that was pretty phenomenal. I knew that people had faith in me. And quite frankly, I just didn't want to let them down. So I took that first step to do everything I could and learn as much as I could as a frontline leader, so that when I'm stepping into the mid-level leadership position, more than likely I would leave familiar territory and have to step into unfamiliar territory. So it's really just a faith walk. Everything that we do, quite frankly, in life is a faith walk. We take that first step. Dr. Martin Luther King taught us. I was in Atlanta a couple of weeks ago, and I just went over to the King Center again just to kind of look around. And he reminds us, and I have it behind me, I don't know if you can see it or not, but he says, listen, go ahead and take the first step, even though you can't see the entire staircase. And that's powerful. Right? Everything that we do. So surround yourself with good people that you can call upon and lean on when you have questions, mentors. Expand your network of other like-minded men and women who think like you, who you can reach out to when you have questions, and go for it. And don't be afraid of failure. Failure is a very subjective word anyway. Nobody is successful unless we first fail and fall down and pick ourselves up and dust ourselves off. So don't be afraid of that. And don't worry too much about what people are going to say or think. Just keep pressing forward. And before you know it, you would have met your goal.
Well, so beautifully said. I really appreciate the words there, Kevin, because our response to failure oftentimes really is where the real lesson comes in, right? You get 3 swings of baseball for a reason, right? You get 3 strikes, so it's anticipated. You're going to miss 1 or 2 pitches, right? Failure isn't a bad thing. It's what our response is, what we do after it arrives. Do we mope? Do we cry? Do we beat up ourselves? Or we go, here's what I can do different. Here's what I can do better.
Yeah, I like that. As a matter of fact, getting back to your baseball analogy, the baseball player that actually wins the award for the best batting average is only out of a 1.000, they're in the 0.33 range, right? and they play 82 games a year. So you can you imagine, like, you missing the baseball the overwhelming majority of the time, yet you just signed a $117 million contract.
That's it.
Now keep that in perspective, right?
It totally does. It's okay.
Go for it.
Meaning it's okay to fail. That's what I'm hearing. Loud and clear.
There you go. That's it right there. And like I said earlier, both the word success and the word failure, they're both subjective. They mean different things to different people. To me, success is being a great husband and a great father, period. Now, to other people, it's money. To other people, it's cars. Other people, it's being happy, having good health, food in the refrigerator. But for me, it's just very simple because it's subjective. Well, for me, failure is the precursor to success, right? I found my lovely wife, who we now have celebrated 30 years. Why? Because of the failures with the girlfriends prior to meeting her.
That's right.
Right? So it's all subjective. Go for it. Go for your dreams. Aim high.
I love it. I love it. I'm inspired, Kevin. I'm going to run outside now and go do something big. I like it.
All right.
This has been such an awesome chat. And as we were talking, I mean, and there's so much synergies because I can relate. I've had a long-standing career in government, and I'm almost 30 years. I've got an autistic child, which I've learned so much from growing up, and in lessons I've taken from her that I can show about the importance of potential and living up to your dreams and not letting people hold you back because of where they think you are. And so when you touch on those things briefly, I can connect, and it resonates with me so well. Congratulations for the work that you're doing, but more importantly, Kevin, for the impact that you're having. It's phenomenal. Being able to take life lessons, and to me, that's always the biggest gift, right? When you can take an experience or a lesson in your life and not only just overcome it, but shine it up and give it to someone else, and it's a value to them. That to me, by far, is the most impactful thing that we've done, and you continue to do that. So congratulations, and thank you.
Yep, thank you, sir. I appreciate everything you're doing. Keep up the great work. Keep smiling.
Absolutely.
And it's been an absolute joy. And if anybody wants to reach out to me, the name of my company is the Johnson Leadership Group. Yep. And of course, the website is thejohnsonleadershipgroup.com. One more thing I just wanted to share real quick. Yeah. We just launched a brand new online leadership course.
Okay.
Through an organization down in Irving, Texas. Our goal is to reach a million aspiring and seasoned leaders around the globe. It was just recently launched, and I'm going to send you the link.
Please.
So that perhaps you can share it with all of your good people, all of your good listeners around the globe as well. And look forward to perhaps maybe meeting you in person one day.
It'll be absolutely my pleasure to have not only share the link, but to meet you as well, Kevin. Maybe I'll get down there and check out your ministry or and the work that you're doing. So yes, it'll be a pleasure.
Excellent. All right. Well. Sounds like a plan.
Take care.
All right. Thank you, sir.
You're back. We are on the podcast, and much thanks and appreciation goes out to Kevin for being here and sharing some insights and the in-depth conversation on leadership. It really, really is appreciated, Kevin. And I gotta congratulate you all the great work that you're doing. Please, my friend, definitely keep it up. You know, when I think back to the nuggets of insight that I got from my conversation with Kevin, he really said a lot of great stuff. And if there was just one thing that I would take from the chat that we had, without question, it absolutely would have to be this. Leaders who know better are more creative, innovative, and strategically prepared for the future. Now, apart from knowing better, effective leaders should also lead better. By leading better, I mean that they must guide others through their actions. Leaders have a fundamental right, especially the most effective leaders, to lead by example. That's absolutely their responsibility. And their actions are consistent with their words. The two have to be in sync. Leaders should also carry out their leadership responsibilities with transparency, honesty, and fairness while inspiring others to do the exact same thing. So it's not do as I say, leaders are actually following through. And those leaders that know, lead, and do better can engage your teams, inspire innovative thinking, and create a culture of trust, and they really bring creativity wherever they go. They also create a positive work environment and develop a culture of excellence within their organization. It's also important to understand that effective leadership is fundamental at all organizational levels. Hence, leaders that aim to know, lead, and do their best in their organization will achieve success, and the results will be positive. Now, attaining these three, knowing, leading, and doing, requires time, effort, and commitment. But once achieved, leaders can create a positive impact that can transform not only an organization, but an entire industry. We've come to the end of another edition of the most audacious living podcast, or the most audacious podcast the internet has to offer. This is the Audacious Living Podcast. As always, I send my thanks and appreciation to those lovers of Audaciousness. You amazing listeners are the ones that keep this going. So for that, I say thank you and express my appreciation. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and be audacious.
You've been listening to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by Audley Stevenson. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be audacious.